Welcome to Conversations That Matter. We want to hear from you. We want to involve you in this conversation this evening.
We have some great guests with us tonight. I'm Brittany. And Michelle.
I'm Michelle. I think when we started that was our key. Started the Conversations That Matter because it was that crazy summer of 2020 and the death of George Floyd, and I think people had the opportunity to see for yourself what was going on. Right. And then there were folks who were like, well, we don't have that here. We don't have that kind of stuff. And so, it is here. It is here. Maybe not be at that extreme, but it's enough to get you those feels. I agree. I think having the opportunity to not only share your story, but to be able to respond back and share and find that common ground.
The surprise was we knew coming in that we came from Central Alabama, which was like 50-50. Mm-hmm. So everybody in school, everything was half and half. So there was, and there was really, I did not experience any racism until I got to Tennessee. Where I came from, everybody wanted diversity. So I was so surprised and hurt when I was so dismissed by the business world. Some stuff I couldn't let slide, but it turned into, you're seeing stuff that's not there. Mm-hmm. I'm like, well, you can't do that. That's showing the difference. That's racist. That statement was racist. We need to address it. They was like, Tate, you're seeing the racism. There is no racism.
So for me, like growing up in Carter County, Elizabethan City, it was very much like the opposite spectrum. Like things were not okay for Black people. Blatant racism, microaggressions, definitely just like not feeling safe anywhere I went. It's hard to find that balance of like, okay, I need to stay safe and protect myself survive versus I'm trying to thrive and like do good. And so like, how do you find that balance?
Johnson City shaking because I grew up too. You're told like to leave here, get out of here, and that always offended me because there's nothing to do here. And it's like I don't know. I grew up with a lot to do. I grew up like my room was like a library, and I didn't know what I was even doing, but it was just living a boy's life.
So we had some parallels, even though I grew up way up in Alaska, because I was also that kid just out in nature, building forts, watching birds.
You don't know it, but you're adopting the pace of nature. Nature's patient. It doesn't ask for anything. It just does.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
And
now I know.
You can exist. It felt safe, and it felt like for a nerdy kid. So I grew up in a very cultist religion. I grew up in a mixed race family. Completely different experience with the same words. Completely different. Because so I relate to a lot of what you're saying, even though our experiences were vastly different. And art was my escape because I was a super nerdy kid. Because we were in a cult, I wasn't allowed to wear makeup. We had to have long hair. We wore dresses, but we stood out like sore thumbs in not a good way. And and I was very much needing to fit in somewhere, and art was also
no doubt.
Like I got you're kind of in art club and all that. You're kind of like the other kids think that's cool, but you're also a nerd at the same time, so they don't really know what to do with you.
Cool, right?
There is a good reason that the McKinney Center is named after the McKinney family. Set the direction for the town and really establish the foundation for the progress that Jonesboro has made over, really a 40-year period of time. And interestingly enough, when he was elected in 1968, he won his election the same night that Martin Luther King was killed in Memphis.
It kind of put a damper on the celebration, but it was something else. It really was, the celebration, and then all of a sudden it's like, what do we do? But it worked well, and he just kept pushing. I mean, that was my dad and my mom.
I mean, I tell you what, it's both of his parents. Marion is somebody you want on your side.
Yes.
She is truly a wonderful person. But if she thinks you've done something wrong, she's going to tell you.
Right.
Fortunately, I've worked hard to be on her good side.
That's it. That's what side you want to be on.
I think a lot of people are deeply wedded to both myth and their own preconceptions about who Black people are. I think they are deeply wedded to their ideas of what whiteness means. And I think beyond that, there are people for whom if they go too far in digging into that area, it becomes extremely uncomfortable.
This isn't about an individual person necessarily. This is about acknowledging large-scale histories, group histories, histories of power and control, economics, poli-sci. So we're talking about bigger things than whether or not you feel unduly attacked because of your identity with whiteness or affiliation with whiteness.
We study Black history, for example. We tend to put it always in relationship to whites and never just Black people as Black people. And that idea that Blacks are monolithic, it's really insulting.
Yeah.
It devalues Black people. It takes away Black agency. It can't just be the bad things. It has to be a much more comprehensive view of the Black experience and allowing Blacks just to be Black and not as something that is always relation to the majority population.
And now, Mr. Wolf, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Something we don't know. I'm just messing with you.
Well, I might start out by saying I'm a racist.
Okay.
I didn't meet my first Black person until I was 30. And I was raised in the Midwest. We're in a suburb of Chicago. I was told by a barber, we don't let Blacks in here after 6 o'clock at night. My parents, you never heard the N-word. But as I reflect back on my youth and that, there was racism. And heck, I didn't know what white privilege was. I didn't know what white supremacy was. I really didn't know that until maybe 3-4 years ago. Taking a lot of education, a lot of experience, and a lot of talking to this guy.
What we're seeing today is basically a repeat of what we had 50 some years ago. The difference today is there is more white people that have joined hands and marching with, hopefully to try to see a change, in hopes that this will come to some type of head. And with me saying this, it would be wonderful to see where some of the white people and where some of their conscience is, the ones who have power. They see the problem. Are they going to do anything about it? Or are we going to have to continue to suffer like we've been suffering for all of these hundreds of years?
You can educate the mind. You cannot educate the heart. You have to experience it.
I've gained a lot of clarity looking back. So I was in graduate school 2004 to 2005 at UNC, and they had 4 divisions of chemistry: analytical, inorganic, organic, and physical. And so across all of the divisions, they had us all in one auditorium for the orientation. It was me and one other Black female. And I remember just sitting there like, really? This is all y'all could find? Like, I know there's some other people of color interested in chemistry, but there's names for it now. Stereotype threat was really big for me, and imposter syndrome. So because there aren't a lot of women in STEM, and then aren't a lot of people of color in STEM, it is sort of like, well, how did I get here? And you don't see people who look like you to mentor you. And so with stereotype threat, with every exam, there's this like fear and anxiety that you're going to reinforce the stereotype that people of color are less intelligent or are not going to score as high on an exam, or that whole thing, girls are bad at math.
My experience is a little bit different, and I attribute it solely to my upbringing in Newark, New Jersey. While I did not have any Black women in STEM as well as Black women in STEM, and particularly for me 20 years ago, starting out in this field as a PhD student, I did not have any women mentors. But I had mentors in other fields. And so women who were in other disciplines, particularly a lot of educators. And even just growing up, my teachers who pushed me into STEM as well, growing up in Newark, being tough, being fierce, knowing how to handle situations and things that come your way. So I did feel like I was very prepared, having a grandmother and a mother and just a father and parents who are people in the community, godparents who looked out for me. I'm the first person in my family to graduate from college and then have a PhD. And even with that, they were very supportive. And so even though they didn't understand the science and the chemistry and the background, they knew how to persevere.
If you could tell adults something today about skin color and being friends and all that, what would you tell adults? What do they need to know?
It does not matter at all.
Doesn't matter at all.
Everyone is an equal person, and no one deserves to be treated better than anyone else.
Perfect.
It's amazing to me. We've learned so much in terms of trying to be intentional, trying to figure out ways and that the kinds of things that we can do that actually, it gets beyond talk. What can you do on a day-to-day basis that help bring people together? How do you get people engaged? And it's always a challenge, and there's always improvements to be made. But over a period of time, it tends to grow, and the participation, the diversity of activities in town tends to grow. And so, I think that we have a lot to be proud of in Jonesboro.
Please tell me.
We're done. So thanks, folks. Hope you have a good night.
Bye.
Yeah, come on.
Please subscribe if you actually can.
Please subscribe if you can.